Warning. You are about to enter the American
Gordon Liddy.
Booster.
Go.
Retro.
Go.
Vital.
Go fly.
Guidance.
Guidance go.
Decom.
We go fly.
Telview.
Go.
Control.
Go fly.
Inco.
We are go.
Network.
Go.
Recovery.
Go.
Capcom.
We're go fly.
Launch control. This is the G-Man. We are go for launch. And it is I, G. Gordon. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Joining me now is the redoubtable Dr. Patrick Michaels, the number one practicing climatologist in the United States, if not the world today. He is Senior Research Fellow for Policy and Economic Development at George Mason University and Senior Fellow in Environmental Studies at CATO Institute. And I noticed, Dr. Michaels, earlier in the week that your good friend, Dr. Michael Mann, was the author of a piece that was published, I don't know, New York Times or someplace like that, one of these op-ed pieces. Did you catch that by any chance?
I haven't seen that, but I do know that Dr. Mann is in Disneyland this morning, and he's actually claims that he has the Nobel Prize, and he was listed on the program as Nobel Prize winner. Now, usually you get a look at the program and you say, hey, that's not true. Fact of the matter is very simple. Mann was, and so am I, a active participant in something called the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. My existence there proves that all garden parties need skunks, okay? But because of the laws of supply and demand, the skunks fly in the front of the plane, so it's not so bad. Anyway, so Mann, and also in his book, claims the Nobel Prize. No, the fact of the matter is, it's correctly stated that he was on the panel which was awarded the Nobel Prize. The individuals that actually got a citation have been spelled out, and I can tell you, his name's not on there, and I know mine's not. Why do we misrepresent our credentials on climate change unless there's something lacking? But here's the best part about Mann in Disneyland. I got a call from the Orange County Board of Supervisors saying, hey, could you come out on Friday? We want to have somebody to speak, give another viewpoint other than Michael Mann. And I said, sure. And then that all of a sudden dropped when apparently, and this is the story I hear, I presume it's correct, is that Mr. Mann said that he would not appear on a stage if there was opposition, and that presumes me.
Well, of course.
I mean, somebody ought to write
you need him alive.
See, actually, Mann's pretty good. Somebody ought to write a letter to Rodney Erickson. Somebody out there write a letter to Rodney Erickson, the president of Penn State University, saying your climatologist is behaving in a manner that does not reflect well upon the Pennsylvania State University. And you guys got enough trouble, by the way.
Boy, they sure do.
So, come on. Write that letter. I wonder if Erickson is aware this stuff is happening. By the way, he's a very good guy. The interim president up there. I think he would be very sensitive to this.
Well, he ought to be. I mean, as you say, Penn State is in a lot of trouble.
They have some PR issues, and when
that's putting it mildly.
Well, I'm a mild-mannered guy,
Yeah, sure.
But I really think that this nonsense about people on federal grants, tons of them, not allowing, saying, I'm going to speak in public, but I'm not going to allow any opposition, or I'll take my ball, or I'll take my taxpayer money and go home. No. Somebody needs to make this public at a very high level. I just did.
Yeah, you just did. Well, boy. Well, that's astonishing.
It's mind-boggling. There is a guy by the name of Ross Gelbspan who wrote a book called The Heat Is On. And he claimed to have gotten a Pulitzer Prize for something at the Boston Globe. No, he didn't. He was the editor of an article that got the Pulitzer Prize. You give the prize to the authors, last I heard.
Well, of course.
So, when people start doing things like saying they have honors and awards that they don't have, I think of the, tinkling cymbal, empty vessel.
There are people who are like that. The military has a problem with people like that. I mean,
Barack Obama.
Well, I didn't hear about Barack Obama.
Well, never mind. I don't want to get into that one.
No, but there was a fellow out in Arizona, where I have a home, who was a president or publisher of a newspaper, and he used to show up at big meetings and things in an Air Force general's uniform with all kinds of decorations on it, and it said he was a reserve Air Force general, and he wasn't. I don't know whether he's ever even been in the service.
Well, that's odd. We see this kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah, people found out because he had his decorations on in the wrong order, and somebody, who had been in the military and knew, said, "Hey, wait a minute."
Oh, that's funny. There's another thing going on. Talk about things not being represented as they are. There's a renewable energy index that you can invest in, and it's crashing completely. People, now well-meaning, my greener friends academics who were investing sustainably have found that their money is not being sustained at all. And if you look at the companies that were in this index that are going bankrupt, it's absolutely mind-boggling. If you take a look at the index, you can see...
This one here?
Yeah, here, take a look at the behavior of this thing. It's dropped about, 80% or so.
You got, folks, there's a graph here, and it starts at the upper left-hand corner, and it ends on the lower right-hand corner, and it's almost a direct diagonal line.
Yeah, the performance of that and the Dow are not very consonant, I can tell you that.
Well, there's
a list of all the companies, the greeny companies that have gone bankrupt.
Listen to this, folks. Solyndra, Beacon Power, Ener1, Range Fuels, Solar Trust of America.
I trust that one.
Spectra Watt, Evergreen Solar.
That was the first.
Eastern Energy, Unisolar, Bright Automotive, Olson's Crop Service, Energy Conversion Devices, Sovelo, SIAG, Solon, Q-Cells.
Yeah, there's a whole list, and there's a list of the endangered species on this. Q-Cells, by the way, was the world's largest producer of solar cells, of solar photovoltaic panels in Germany. Well, this is what happens, when governments pay people who put panels on their roofs 5 times the market value for their electricity. And then those governments are in a community where a government they kind of have to support is going bankrupt, i.e. Greece.
Yeah.
And the first thing to go, thank God, I don't wish financial ill will on anyone, but I can tell you that what's going on in Europe is at least inducing some sense in this great renewable energy hocus pocus, because they can't afford it.
But are they really? Because, you pick up any of the mainstream newspapers. And
mainstream newspapers are good for starting fires and not much else.
No, but you pick any of them, and they're all still pumping renewables and green and all of this nonsense. And people, presumably, are buying into it.
I don't think so. If they were buying into it, the global renewable energy index would not be crashing. They're not buying into it.
Well, I guess I should have said ideologically they're buying into it.
Yeah, and I have a feeling actually some financially are. They go, hey, wow, this looks like a real good buy now. It's down 80%.
Jeez.
No, it's because the subsidies are being gradually taken away. And here in the United States, the wind energy subsidy is gone. There's a big push in the new budget to put it back in. Oh, yes. And then the ethanol subsidy. That was terminated, and now it's rearing its ugly head again in some agency appropriation.
Who's responsible for that? I mean, is it the agency head, or is it what's going on? Okay, I think what the problem is that Dr. Michaels can't his headphones.
I'm fine now.
Okay.
So what's going on is that there's just an incredible pressure. I mean, there are huge lobbies for ethanol. Remember, the farm lobby is very important. And while if you go up to these guys one-on-one, they say, yeah, we know it produces more CO2 than it saves. But hasn't it been good for the farm community? I mean, this is the straight talk out of Atlas Shrugged, Yeah. We care.
But they're pushing the ethanol that's in your fuel now.
It's 10%.
10%. They're pushing 15%. That will destroy
old cars.
Engines. And matter of fact, General Motors and Chrysler, and I think Ford too, have written to the Congress and said, we will not honor the warranties. If you
on older cars. If you have these big, long powertrain warranties, they say they will not honor them. The other thing is ethanol in gas reduces fuel economy. Yeah. And it reduces it substantially. If you have one of these cars that's got a very sensitive fuel economy monitor on it, like a Honda Insight or a Toyota Prius, you can run an experiment. Get yourself a test track of about 30 miles or 10 miles and maybe run 5 laps on it with the gasoline that's got 10% ethanol in, and then run the tank down. Go get yourself a tank full of non-ethanol gas. By the way, there's a website, in case you don't know, that tells you where the nearest non-ethanol gas station is. Pop in there, fill it up, and I guarantee you're going to get significantly better gas mileage on the non-ethanol gas.
And it's better for your engine.
Yeah, well, but, we have to care.
Well, I tell you what, Doctor, let's take a quick break for the benefit of our advertisers, none of whom I think are ethanol producers.
Well, so many targets, so little time. We'll be back.
We'll be back, that's right.
G. Gordon Liddy.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here in mid-conversation with my good friend, the top climatologist practicing in the world today, Dr. Patrick Michaels, who is the Senior Fellow in Environmental Studies at the CATO Institute, in a similar position at the George Mason University. And ever since Al Gore used Hurricane Katrina as a false example of anthropogenic global warming, meaning man-made global warming, he'd been predicting that we would have more and more hurricanes and greater intensity and so forth. And I'm just wondering if you were aware of what has occurred since Katrina in that regard.
Yeah, there hasn't been a major, that's Category 3, 4, or 5 hurricane cross our shoreline since that happened. Every day that goes by, we set another record for how long we have gone between major hurricane strikes in the United States.
Wow.
This is mind-boggling because, I can't tell you how many radio programs I did in the fall of 2005 defending the position that you cannot relate one big hurricane to global climate change, and we ought to be really, really careful about this. And then 2005 was an exceedingly active year. Not just Katrina. Rita was a major hurricane. Wilma was a major hurricane. Wilma set the all-time low barometric pressure record for the Western Hemisphere, or rather for the Atlantic Basin. Big storms, and, now everything has gone back down to baseline or below baseline. Actually, the integrated power of tropical cyclones, that's tropical storms and hurricanes around the world, is at or near its lowest value measured as we speak today. But yeah, we have gone the absolute record number of days between major storms crossing the U.S. coast. So now, when we'll get a Category 3 or 4 strike one of these years. Maybe we'll get it this year. I am going to be real interested to see if the hype machine has the audacity to hope to crank itself up. That was a triple entendre on, this is a song. Oh, God, Al Gore's here. Hurricane Katrina, a sign of global warming. Scientists say these will become more frequent in coming years. It would be virtually impossible for us to go 7 years without a major hurricane strike in the United States. Well, we just did.
Oh, jeez. You mentioned cyclones. Is a hurricane in the Pacific what you call a typhoon?
Depends on whether you're in the Eastern Pacific or the Western Pacific. In the Eastern Pacific, we call them hurricanes. By the way, we didn't know there were so many in the Eastern Pacific. We thought there were maybe like 5, 6, 7 a year. Oh, there can be years where it's well over 20. We only learned this with satellites because they have a propensity for going out over the open ocean where there isn't anybody. And then there are typhoons in the Western Pacific, which everybody said were going to be going up, 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 and up. They're not. And by the way, what happens when a Category 4 typhoon hits Hong Kong? Nothing, because they're used to them. How shocking.
Oh, my. Okay, Dr. Michaels and I will be right back after we bring you up to speed on the news.
The G-Man is back.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm with Dr. Patrick Michaels, the Senior Fellow in Environmental Studies at CATO Institute, similar position with George Mason University, the past president of the American Association of State Climatologists, #1 climatological scientist operating in the world today. Tell me about this big to-do they're supposed to have by 2015, which is pretty much just around the corner now, about a world climate agreement of some sort.
Well, the UN is now 20 years into their process of trying to use the climate change issue to take your money and to enrich kleptocrats.
Well, also to control everything you do.
Yeah, it hasn't really gone too well. One of the signs that things aren't going well is when the rhetoric just gets even more extreme. So we're now experiencing the rhetorical run-up to a conference called Rio Plus 20. And our friends at the World Wildlife Fund for Nature just issued their piece. WWF, by the way, is the biggest environmental organization in the world. I don't know, a lot of people don't know that. And they said that we must completely abandon the notion of profit. Within the next 30 years, we should get, and this is like this guy who's ran for prime minister in France, who said, if you make over a few $100,000 a year, your tax rate's going to be 100%. Remember the old joke? Yeah. How much IRS form? How much money did you make? Send it in. Yeah,
right. Well, but if there's to be no profit, there'll be no risk. There'll be no entrepreneurs. Nothing will happen.
There will be no revenue for government.
I know. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, yes. I mean, unfortunately, I don't like to call people crazy, but to say that we must outlaw profit is crazy.
It certainly is. Oh, my word. Now, what about all this heat that Al Gore and his like, what is it, trend births missing heat?
Yeah.
It's still missing.
There's a calculated what's called radiation imbalance that you can generate based upon whatever you assume the sensitivity of carbon dioxide or temperature to carbon dioxide is. P.S. It's lower than most people say. But if you don't do that, the ocean is just not warming up at the rate that it's supposed to. This new paper in Geophysical Research Letters has a rate of about 0.09 degrees Celsius per decade since 1955. You know, all the computer models that we have a number that's about twice that in the recent era. This is yet another piece of independent evidence that too much warming was forecast too fast. And when it becomes too much too fast, doing something like banning profits just doesn't make any sense anymore, not that it ever did.
Jeez. Boy. Well, with these things, coming one after another, showing that this is just all bogus, how do these people like the World Wildlife Outfit and the rest of them sustain any initiatives along these lines, because they don't make any sense at all, and they're
it's very simple. You put out inflammatory rhetoric on the web, and when you are a scientist on federal money and you have a position that seems somewhat alarming, you make sure that people who aren't taking federal money and everybody else aren't allowed to debate you. That'll do it for a while until the dam breaks. Al's the same way. Oh, God, I got to tell you, Al Gore has, you can sign up with Al, and he will give you his PowerPoint show and how to deliver it. I think over 10,000 people have done this. I was down in Charlottesville last weekend. I was a part of a graduation for a group called Upward Bound that I knew because one of my graduate students worked with them. They help disadvantaged people with science and math. It's a very good organization. And they were going to get a guy by the name of Bill McKibben, who's a real green radical. But apparently when he heard that Dr. Michaels was coming back to the University of Virginia, he got too busy all of a sudden. So anyway, a doctor from New York State shows up, and his credential is that he's taken Al Gore's course. And so he gives the Gore presentation. Oh, my God. I felt sorry for the poor guy after we got done. But I can tell you the essence of the presentation.
Yeah.
The essence of the presentation is climate pornography. You show a flood. You show a satellite picture of a big hurricane. And then you say, and these are all increasing because of global warming. And then some killjoy like me, actually, instead of showing the naked girl, shows what all the women look like. You show all the data. And it's just not a pretty picture.
Oh, jeez. Oh, you did that to the poor man.
Oh, God, I couldn't help it. The line, oh, and here's the naked girl. Of course, that grabbed, the 21-year-old college students. They got that part.
Oh, it's funny because I remember when I was in the Army, and they were training us in the operating cycle of the 37-millimeter gun. And they had all these classes in tin huts down outside of El Paso in the middle of the summer. It was 100 and some odd degrees in there, and it was right after lunch, and everybody would fall asleep. And about every fifth thing, instead of showing the feed slide lever Paul, they'd flash a thing of a naked girl up there, and everybody wake up.
Yeah, well, that's what this was like, unfortunately. But, I guess the thing that is incredible to me, if this is the product that's going out there, and this is supposed to convince people, now I know why they're not winning. It's not a conspiracy of me and my apparently few friends. I can tell you that. It's that your material, you really ought to improve on this material. It really, really stinks, okay? And, these kids, they saw through it.
They did.
It was, oh, yeah, they did. They said, well, why didn't you do what Dr. Michaels did and show all the data? That's when you get the answer that you're paid to work at CATO for, where the guy looks at the camera and goes,
Oh, my. Let's go to the phone. And let's see, looks like North Carolina, Ray.
Hello?
Ray, you're on the air.
I'd like a comment from your guest. There's a big race in North Carolina. There's big races all over the world. Indianapolis races, NASCAR race in North Carolina. My thought is asbestos. I sold auto parts from 63 to 94. And all of the brake lining had asbestos on it, which means when you mash your brakes, the friction caused that lining to wear off, which means all over the roads, all over the world, it's asbestos dust laying along the side of the road, which means at the racetracks, this is asbestos dust at the racetracks, which means asbestos is supposed to be so incredibly toxic that all these roofs on these commercial buildings, EPA's got to come out there. You got to have an EPA hazard to take that roof off. It costs you a fortune to take it off. You can't put it back. That's why they don't have any tar buckets anymore. You smell that stuff in big cities now because it's against the law because it's such a hazard. So what do you think?
Well, I would sure like to see the measurements. I know it's very obvious. You can smell it. When brakes are overheated, you know that there's asbestos coming off of them.
Yeah, but they're using ceramic now, aren't they? They don't use asbestos anymore, do they, for that?
I think on some. Anyway.
Really, I don't know either, but my thought is for 50 years they used asbestos, maybe longer than that, really, 70 or 80, which means all along the old roads, asbestos dust, which means when they're mowing the grass, you're shooting all that asbestos dust straight up in the air.
Well, I guess the problem is that I don't think we've ever seen an epidemiological study on people who work in pit crews and mesothelioma. It would be a very interesting thing to see. I'm with you. This is the kind of thing where you bring up, I think, very good questions, and unfortunately, we're spending so much money on fake environmental threats that we don't have money to look at this.
Yeah. Well, I know that John's Manville Company used to make asbestos shingles and things like that to put them on.
Well, you know, your listeners might consider this as a warning. If they got any stock in racetracks and all, they might want to dump it all before the EPA goes out there and closes them down.
Well, it's going to take some time because I just don't think the epidemiological evidence is there, but that's just a hypothesis. You know, when a guy comes on and says, I just don't think, or I think about something scientific, that means the work probably hasn't been done, and we actually need to do the studies to find out.
Really, I got an ulterior purpose. To me, the asbestos on the roof, turning it off wouldn't be a big deal. What I'm pointing out is got two standards. What I realize is government employees are attacking people who are not like them. They're trying to make the world just like them. They're attacking people who go out here and earn their money and do without sacrifice, save capitalist saving.
So you think that we have an army of people in Washington who are paid $160,000 a year or so. They have jobs for life, and you're telling me that they exist to fatten their bureaucracies and to invent problems. You're just a cynic.
I'm also 65 years old. I worked 19 years and didn't take a day on vacation. I worked 7 years every day from one Christmas on Sunday to the next Christmas on 7 years later, the next Christmas on Sunday.
That's as long as we've gone without major hurricane strikes. My God, that's a long time.
Well, I got one thought. Every time I buy something made in China, I'm saying God bless China and the heck with the United States.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ray. We appreciate that. Let's go to what can we do? All right, we got to take a break. The producer, who is all powerful in radio, says we need to take a break for the benefit of our advertisers. We'll do that, and then we'll go back to the phones.
The G-Man is back. This is the G. Gordon Liddy Show.
And I'm back with Dr. Patrick J. Michaels, the Senior Fellow in Environmental Studies at the CATO Institute, #1 climatologist in the world today. And going to the telephones at 1-800-GG-LIDDY from Maryland, Victor.
Good morning.
Good morning, Victor.
Hi, Victor.
I've talked to you before. I'm the blind guy in Silver Spring. Anyway, I loved last winter because there was no snow whatsoever, maybe a dusting if at most. And I want to know, will we have a repeat this coming winter, because I really hate snow.
Anybody that can give you a forecast for the snowfall a year in advance is faking it. Okay, here's the deal, Victor.
Yeah.
It's easy to make a forecast. Being right's the hard part.
That's true.
And you know, I have to tell you that anything I would tell you would be pure bunkum. So, no.
Well, what gets me, Victor, is these people who are professionals who get on the air and say that, you know, next Thursday it's going to be something or other, and they're wrong, and yet they will purport to tell us what the weather's going to be like in 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend says the same thing. You got these idiots on TV. They say, oh, we're going to get this big time next Thursday, and it doesn't happen, or if it does, it's way off the mark.
Well, there are a number of forces at work here, one of which happens to be market forces. This person is going to remain nameless, but there was a TV weather guy at a major East Coast city that is known to be extremely disrupted by an inch of snow. And about 3 days in advance, he would start saying, oh, we could get a bunch of snow on Wednesday. And, of course, what happened is all the kids then forced their parents to watch this show.
Yeah.
And after about day T-2, oh, it's just going to miss. Oh, too bad.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, I have to make a forecast for you. I can tell you for January 20th of next year, there is a strong chance, maybe about a 60% probability, that there will be a major snowstorm in the East Coast of the United States, somewhere between about January 15th and January 25th. Did you know that?
That's because it's winter time and you expect something like that.
Right, exactly. But scientists say we will have a major snowstorm next January.
But every time one of these liberals that I know starts talking about global warming, I tell them why I love it, because it keeps the snow away. And one of them says, oh, that's right. Snow muffles the sound so you can't hear the traffic and you can't feel the curves with your cane.
Well, you know what, though? I read after the winter of 2009, 2010 in the Mid-Atlantic region, scientists say those major snowstorms were caused by global warming. You know, you can't have it both ways. The fact of the matter is on the East Coast of the United States, what determines whether it snows or not is not the existence of a storm or the existence of moisture. It's the existence of cold air, and we tend to be lacking in cold air in the eastern United States. That's why we're marginal for snow. And if you ask anyone what will happen if you increase the carbon dioxide concentration of the atmosphere, is the first place you notice is the major cold air masses abrade.
Well, one of the things that I know about Washington, D.C., you've got to understand Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., in a heavy rain, people start abandoning their cars in the middle of the road, and others put on tire chains.
My friend Larry Kalkstein did a study to see what city in North America has the most worker absenteeism per inch of snow. And guess what?
Washington,
D.C. It's our nation's capital. I wish he had studied attendance at theaters, movie theaters in the mall per inch of snow, because I think it goes up quite a bit. Can't go to work, but we can go to the mall here in D.C.
Yeah. It's D.C. is really
corrupt.
To
try using the English language.
I mean, we're on the rain snow line almost every single time. Well, if it goes slightly to the north, we'll get rain. If it goes slightly to the south, we're going to really get.
Well, I want to tell you something. A part of that is because of the massive urban heat effect in Washington, D.C. It's really warmer than its surrounding countryside. The reason the heat effect is so much greater than it is in other cities is the waste heat from all the money changing hands.
and the hot air coming from Congress.
Yeah, that one's been tried, too.
Bill, thanks for talking to me.
Oh, it's our pleasure, Victor.
Bye-bye.
Well, God bless. Bye-bye. Oh, my. Dear. Oh, whoop. Don't tell me we're out of time already. That's
Time
terrible.
goes quick when you're having fun.
It certainly does.
Next week we'll have the What is Funny About Global Warming Science Hour. You know, you shouldn't be laughing, Gordon. You should be crying. This is tragic.
What's tragic is that there are fools out there that actually believe that nonsense. Oh, my. Nothing can help them.
Well, the world didn't end as planned. That's quite unfortunate.
Right. World to end tomorrow, women and minorities to suffer the most.
Yes. And if not, we have a new apocalypse for you in a year called ocean acidification. Mark my words.